I've mostly all familiar faces here. There are a couple folks, so if you have not met me, my name is Guthrie Fleischman. I'm the principal here at Crespi Middle School. Little background, it's my 4th year here as the principal at Crespi, but 17th year in the district. It's the only job I've had since college, and I love it here. Happy to be here in the district and look forward to a long time further. We're here to talk about kind of the future of schools in the May Valley and Pinole. I see there's some Pinole representation here as well today, so that's a good thing. Appreciate Mr. Duffy for coming. It's been a conversation amongst teachers, conversations with my parents club and other parent groups and whatnot. So Mr. Duffy's here. We've got till 6 o'clock. Matt Duffy, our superintendent. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to spend an hour here with you just getting into conversation and dialogue about some of the things happening across the district specific to facilities and facilities challenges. We are doing a wider study session on Thursday evening at Pienza where we'll have more data and materials to share with you if you want that kind of stuff. Although I will probably cover much of the same this evening, but I didn't bring slides. Just wanted to share a little bit and then really just open it up for questions and make sure the things that are on your mind I can hear and try to answer and give light to as much as possible. I've been able to have a series of conversations over the last couple of weeks. Last week I was here with the Crespi staff. Yesterday I got a chance to sit with the Pinole Middle staff, and yesterday evening with a pretty small group of Pinole Middle families, just to really kind of share what's happening, the challenges we're facing, and try to clarify some communication. Maybe we could just do a quick whip around. I'd love to know who you are and your connection to Crespi or the district, or just give me maybe a little bit of context would be helpful.
Okay, this is my alma mater.
Okay.
My two sons have, well, the younger one is here now in 7th grade.
Yep.
The older one's graduating this year from Pienza. And I'm here because I'm so concerned about the charter schools that are taking over our district and what's going to be left for the rest of our community who charter schools are not going to take over. Yeah. And also, I understand that we have our financial and legal obligations that we have to meet with this law that we're dealing with. So I'm really interested in how I can be a part of this long-term strategy to turn this issue around, because it's horrid. And how can we, I want to know, how can we make a difference for our public schools so that we can have the chance to try to improve them instead of just shutting them down? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Janine Catino.
Yeah, so we'll save the heavy stuff. We'll get into it.
It'll take an hour and a half here.
Yeah. Can we keep going around?
I'm Nicole Flack. I am the president of Crespi's African American Parent Advisory Council and Parents Group, and I'm a member of their SAP here. I'm also vice president of OWID with APAC. I have a 7th grader here, and I have a 5th grader at OWID, and I'm highly concerned with the state of my public schools. I sent you a couple of those.
Nice to see you.
Can we ask the people to speak to the room and not just to Mr. Duffy?
My name is Nicole Flack. I'm the president of APAC here at Crespi and president of Parents Club. I have a 7th grader here. I also have a 5th grader at Olinda, where I'm the vice president of their APAC. And I'm concerned with the state of our public schools.
Francina Davis, and I'm concerned too. My children went to Crespi, and I have a grandchild who is at Olinda, and this is her next stop from 7th grade. So I'm trying to find out what's going on at the school.
I'm Jody.
Sorry,
Sorry,
I was looking
My name is Kamal, and honestly, I'm here to learn because I want to learn about the pros and cons of everything. So that's my main goal. I do have 2 kids attending here, but they will be going to Pienza next year. However, I am concerned about the community, and I want the best for the community. That's why I want more information about both.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Joni. I have a 7th grader here at Crespi and a 5th grader at Murphy.
Great, thank you.
Short, sweet.
And I'm her husband and product of public schools, and definitely believe in it and concerned about where it's headed.
Chad Estep. I have a 7th grader here at Crespi and one at De Anza in 9th grade, and I think I'm here for the same reason everyone else is.
Yep.
That's what's happening.
Great.
My name is Lupe Step, my husband. Same, have a daughter here, 7th grader, and one at Mienza, who's going to WCCUSD.
Great.
Brenda, I have a 7th grader at Crespi and a 5th grade at Murphy, and I'm also concerned.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I have a 8th grader here at Crespi and a 5th grader at Murphy, and another child that will be going to Murphy who will be a kindergartner, so we want to know what's the future of Crespi.
Yep, for sure.
Hi, I'm Tammy Campbell, and I'm a concerned citizen in Pinole, especially with the impact that it impacts on Pinole and those and all our kids. Pretty upset.
I am Zandy Buckner, and I have twins who are in 9th grade at De Anza now. They went to 7th and 8th grade at Crespi. I was the president of the Crespi Parents Club. Before that, my kids went to Valley View. My kids are thriving at De Anza because of what they got at Crespi, both educationally and socially. And I think that this is a gem of a school, no matter what it looks like from the outside. And you've got great teachers and staff, and I would hate to see something happen to what's going on at the school, because I think it's saving kids, and I don't think you can look at the numbers in a district like ours. You have to look at what's happening to the kids, and my kids are college bound, as are all of their friends, and they really are thriving in high school thanks to Crespi.
Hi, I'm Lydia, and I have an 8th grader at Crespi and a 5th grader at Valley View. And here for the same reason, want to find out what our options are. It feels like we're a little bit between a rock and a hard place.
Hi, my name is Monica Setchern. Estoy aquí porque también tengo hijos. I want to speak for the Spanish one. Tengo una niña en 7º, un niño en 8º, va para De Anza. Y también pensar, si bien a lo mejor ya no les va a tocar estar aquí, de todas maneras, qué es lo que está pasando con la comunidad, porque tanta preferencia a las charters, que yo lo que entiendo es no tienen muchos beneficios académicos y sin embargo están agarrando todo y literalmente quieren agarrar las escuelas. Así.
You're bilingual.
I'm sorry, it's basically the same.
No, I understand, but I wasn't sure you
it is basically the same what all the parents are saying. I'm sorry. Yeah, it is basically the same.
And I like
the same
you
concern. Thank you.
My name is John Solovich, and I happen to share the twins that she was talking about. Actually, it's more 75. No. And they had 7th and 8th grade education at Crespi, and they're 9th graders at De Anza, and everything she said is true. They thrived here. They're doing really great at De Anza, and it's not just the scholastic, it's the cultural experience, it's the social, it's the support. It's the leadership that Crespi had and has, and we were just, and it was such an attraction that we both volunteered our time here. The president of the Parents Club and me doing things relating to that. And prior to that, they were Valley View. I'm an SF kid, so I went through the WCCUSD, and I had the same experience there growing up, just 4 decades ago, whatever. And I want to see that continue, and I'm not immune to what's going on in the world right now. And I don't like at all what I see from charter schools. I don't like the business plan. I don't like the pressure tactics. I don't like, the number one thing, the day I heard that teachers at charter schools are not accredited, I'm like, who would ever want to put their kids there? I'm also finding out that some parents have actually, in spite of this, in spite of us talking friendships, they're choosing these unaccredited teachers in schools, and part of the reason, my own personal opinion, is because they don't have to put as much work in. There's this thought that charter schools will uplift in ways you've never known before, and so, oh cool, I don't have to worry about monitoring the homework anymore. I don't have to do this. And it's in my opinion, bullshit. go ahead. President can say it, so
There's
can I.
kids here.
And so the president said it on Saturday, so we're all allowed now. Anyway, so obviously I'm a little emotional about it. That's my feeling, and that's why I'm here today. I want to hear more about it.
To this table.
Okay, okay.
Hello, sorry for being tardy. My name is Veronica Garcia Luis. I have 3 children. 2 of them are here at Crespi. They're 8th graders, and 1 high schooler at Dianza. And we started at Valley View, so there's a lot of Valley View family here and community. And you know, we had choices around, you know, do we put our kids in other schools? And a group of us decided we would invest in our local schools. And so there's good leadership here. There's great classes that are happening. Sorry, I don't normally sound this way. I'm recovering. Yeah, it's just important for us to understand where our priorities are, and if we want to invest as a community, we really need to come up with a plan to stick together. And charter schools, we just have to be really mindful of what the game plan is in the end, and the efforts that we've been putting in.
Got it. Let's get this table, then we'll go to the back. Yeah.
So I'm Joseph Glatzer. I'm a history teacher at Pinole Middle, and so I'm intimately affected by charter schools. We have voices co-locating on our campus starting this year. And it's sort of heartbreaking for me to see a new science teacher come in who doesn't have a science lab because it was given over to these charter schools. And frankly, just to underline the whole issue, I don't want millionaires and billionaires in charge of our public education system. If they want to open a private school, they can do that with their own money. But this is public, this is for everybody. And charter schools discriminate against special ed students. They don't take students who don't do well on tests. Then they brag about their high test scores. And so it is a total fraud, it's a sham. And my question for you tonight, and for all of us to think about, is when are we going to team up with other districts and do a lawsuit to overturn these unjust laws? When are we going to have some brave people step up and do that? Because complying with these laws into bankruptcy is what's going to happen. You know,
We will go bankrupt.
that's what's going to happen. And so either we comply and end up losing everything, or we fight it and at least have a chance to save our district and to save public education in general.
Any lawyers there?
That's my opinion.
Not that kind of law.
I'm John Erminger. I'm a math teacher at Pinole Middle School, and I've been actually learning about management of charters, and it's very interesting. So charters take public money, but it's privately managed. And I went to Voices yesterday, and I learned something very interesting. They gave their second interim budget presentation, and that finance guy was giving reports for every single school. So every one of the Voice campuses is a separate LEA, and they file a separate budget. So that makes it really difficult to track their finances. On the other hand, if you go through that exercise, because each budget is for an individual school, there'll be a lot of detail there as well. But that's very different than a regular school system. That's a very strange structure, isn't it, Mr. Duffy?
Yeah. Let's keep doing introductions and we can get into the heart of some of these questions.
I'm Carlos Taboada. I'm a retired teacher, 21 years experience in our district, and I'm part of the group called Defend Public Education Now. And I think that if following the law is driving you to bankruptcy, I think it's time to stand up and challenge the law. I agree with Mr. Gladstone.
My name's Ardo Rentila. I'm from the Fairmead Hilltop Neighborhood Council, and I'm also one of the founders of Defend Public Education Now. We are not for charters, and we look forward to growing our group and speaking to each and every one of you, and perhaps getting your contact information. Thank you.
Great.
Any parents in the back, or you want to introduce yourself?
My daughter went to Crespi here, and now my daughter is going to start this year, and I'm really concerned if this school is going to close, where all the kids are going to go. So I am here to know what is your plan.
My name is Ana Noriega. My nephew is a 7th grader, and I have 2 children in Murphy, and I'm also really concerned about this.
Claudia y tengo un niño en Dianza, uno aquí en Crespi y uno en Murphy.
Yo soy Ana Rosa, mi hijo estuvo en Crespi, en Murphy, y aquí hizo en Crespi, ahorita está yendo al college en Berkeley, y ha tenido muy buenos grados y es muy buen, excelente estudiante. Entonces, yo pienso que, pues, gracias a los maestros de aquí, a toda la comunidad que se trata de los estudiantes, y pues es una tristeza, pero pues yo vengo a apoyar, mi hija está aquí también, y pues yo pienso que es muy importante que todos los papás se apoyen para seguir adelante, estemos o no tengamos hijos aquí, pero para los que vengan, para el futuro, no sé.
They want translation?
Yeah, do we have something back there? Sophia's translating.
So I want to make one statement. Why have this meeting at 5 o'clock when people are trying to get home? It's really hard to make a meeting like this. And it makes it, I've been in the school district for a very long time, and it reminds me of the old days of not having participation and not being as transparent. So we might want to think about this. You're talking about the children's lives and parents' lives, and there would be probably more parents here if you held it at 7. And so that's disconcerting to me because it reminds me of what the old school district used to do.
Well, I want to just say, before we start on that note, I certainly worked with the Crespi leadership about when they wanted to do this. We're doing a study session on Thursday that's later.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to come back later. I think the most important thing is you are all getting as much information as you can get. And it's really important to me that we're not miscommunicating anything out there, which is probably a really good starting point to this conversation, so I'll just jump in. I wanted to start with just both a thank you for your patience through the last few months where we've had some information floating out in the community about what's happening in the district, and also just an apology, a personal apology, because we had some conversations about all sorts of things that might take place in the future and all sorts of challenges that were coming in the future. And those conversations got boiled down into the public sphere of the closure of Crespi. And I really want to take the time this evening to make sure that I frame the challenge that we're facing is much bigger than the Crespi Pinole Middle situation. So I want to speak to that sort of first and foremost. So we have a situation where really in the end we have more schools than we have physical campuses. That's the challenge. We have more schools than we have physical campuses if you include the charter schools that we owe facilities to. So we have found creative ways over the years to deal with charters who ask for space, and I can get into what the law requires of us, who ask for space and we have to give them space. We've found all sorts of ways to deal with it. But last year was the first year we felt like we hit the wall. We are out of space, out of extra space, out of extra portables, out of extra money, and we made the decision last year because what we have to offer by law is a 1-year placement for charters. We made the decision to co-locate at 2 schools that had available space. This one and Pinole Middle. That's very difficult, and it's been a challenge for sure, and we've heard that all through the year. Now, those 2 schools have asked us for space again. So charter schools basically can do 2 things. They can go find their own space, work it through there, or under the law, they have the right to ask us for what's called equivalent space, and we have to provide it. There's a lot of negotiating that happens there about how many kids you have, how many kids are you expecting. There's all sorts of back and forth, but ultimately, by law, we do have to provide that space. So now we're in the negotiations for a second year, and what we feel, despite its difficulty, is that Pinole Middle and Crespi have space to share for one more year. But after that, we can't do it. There's no space left. So where we are is figuring out long-term, for the 2021 school year, what are we going to do? Because we have two schools that are growing to either 600 or 800 kids. So we have to figure this out. So while one piece of the challenge is this year-to-year stuff, we know there's two schools that we have obligation to if they continue to ask. One of the things that happened that changed the dynamics for us a little bit was the city of Richmond passed their own ordinance or resolution prohibiting schools to be built in commercial areas. So that's room for applause in one way, but it actually put a lot of pressure on us to find space, because now that a charter school can't go build at Hilltop, now that they can't go rehab a building, they're using the state statutory processes to ask us for facilities, and that's what happened last year. So it puts more pressure on us to look around as a district and find space. I'm not saying had that not happened, we wouldn't be in the same situation. We very well might be sitting here in the same situation, but that dynamic happened. So where we are is ultimately trying to figure out what's going to happen for 1920. What we believe is going to happen for 1920 is we're going to do one more year of sharing. And then what's going to happen in 2021 and beyond. So there was some stuff out there that got out there that we're going to close the schools or merge the schools. So even if you took the schools together, there's about 1,000 kids, right? And so that is just not what we plan to do. There's no plans to do that. And I want to be really clear about that this evening. The only time we would start to think about a problem or a challenge that would cause us to think about closure or merger is if the enrollment of the school declines so precipitously. And that we don't necessarily anticipate. The schools, actually, they're only 2-grade schools. So a lot of times you think of them maybe not that big, but they're 2-grade schools as opposed to a lot of traditional 3-grade middle schools. And if you heard of a 3-grade middle school that was 600 kids, you wouldn't actually think it was that small. So we, as I talk to the staff, really we don't have plans to do that. What our problem is we're short space. Like, that's the ultimate problem. So we really have a couple of options. One is to build some type of portable city like we've done behind Kennedy High School. That's an incredibly expensive proposition because each portable is about $250,000 by the time you get it in, plumb it, electrify it. You've got to bring in portable bathrooms, portable multi-purpose space, portable everything. But at the same time, you're managing financial implications versus all the potential pain of going through the co-location. So that's where we are going to find ourselves in, is a situation where we're either going to have to build portables, a portable city. We're going to have to rehabilitate an old school that is dysfunctional, which is incredibly expensive also. We have schools like Alvarado School, which is in Richmond, but it only services about 300 kids, and it doesn't have a cafeteria, it doesn't have the proper kindergarten bathrooms. What we'll do on Thursday night at the study session is we'll show you like all the data, what all that costs, etc. But that's part of the financial challenge that we're facing. So let me say a couple more things, and then we can open it up. One of the things I don't have the data on around how many students are selecting charter schools from the 2 attendance areas of Pinole Middle and Crespi. What we do know is that about 80% of families in this attendance area who choose a district school for middle school choose Crespi. It's a little under 80%. And Pinole Middle is a little over 80%. But they're very, very close. And so those 20%, because we have all the in-house district data, go to other schools around the district. What we don't know, and we're working on, is just how many students from these attendance areas have chosen charter schools. So I think there is one side of this that we have to continue to keep the enrollment at our schools as strong as possible. Not just the middles, but some of our elementaries, which are very, very small. And we've had a study session on one of them, Steege Elementary in Richmond, which is really tiny. And you get to a point where a school is so small, it's hard to afford its basic services of classroom teachers, principal, custodian, kitchen staff, all of that. So one part of this dilemma is obviously enrollment, but another part is even if we continue the enrollment, we still have these schools that we're going to owe some space to, and that's going to be the challenge for us, thinking across what we want to do to deal with that. And that, I hope, is sort of like the messaging that you all take away, that this is a sort of broader challenge where we're going to have to figure this out, and maybe we're going to say that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the money and we're just going to suck it up. I hear certain points about like challenging the law or saying no to the law. I totally get that, and I also, I have to make sure I'm doing the fiscally responsible thing to not get us in even deeper trouble if we challenge and don't win, while other folks are fighting the battles that they fight. So that's some context and some sharing. I got a chance to be at both schools, like, when was I here, Wednesday? Yeah, it's such a great place. Like, the kids are awesome. They're just like, everybody was at dismissal. It's a little bit of madness, but you know, I was a middle school principal, a middle school teacher. I love middle school, and I love just the energy in both places. So, you know, we really don't want to go through the pain of shutting a school down. And if we ever really had to do that, then we need to go through the right process to figure out what is the right school to close if we ever got in that situation. I spent a lot of my career in Oakland. My kids are in Oakland public schools. So there were certain opportunities where the Oakland School Board had some opportunities to make some decisions to close some things, and they didn't. And they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it until their sort of backs are against the wall now. So I'm also I'm trying to be thoughtful and proactive about what we're going to need to do. But I also want to make sure we're, you know, doing that with you and trying to make the best decisions. So, you know, we're thinking both short and long term about what we need to do, what's going to be the best decision, and that's just like that's what's in the air. So, I think there was anything else from our earliest meeting that I might have mentioned that I haven't said here that was helpful.
No, I mean, the one thing that you touched on a little bit is just that, and kind of how you closed, and I think that's kind of where we should start, is that if we are not proactive now, we will be very reactive 4 or 5 years from now. And so I'm glad to see that folks are coming out. I think the conversation with our staff last Wednesday was very fruitful, and since then I've had probably 15 more conversations with teachers about ideas and things that we can do to be proactive. But I also live in Oakland, and I have a lot of friends that are administrators and teachers and parents in Oakland that are going through what they're going through right now. Not only with the labor situation, but also with these 22 or 5 years from now where Mr. Duffy and the board are forced to make some really hard decisions in which we would have really very little voice at that point. So if there's a silver lining to be gleaned here, that we're starting the conversation, I think, at the right time, and an opportunity to be proactive and have a voice in what happens.
I appreciate you laying out some of the details, because I'm ignorant of them, or I'm less ignorant now.
Yep.
But two thoughts as you were talking popped into my head. I hope you can enlighten me so I can know more.
Yep.
Talking about the law, you said that charter schools, part of the deal is that they need to go see if they can find a site on their own. And then apparently if not, then the burden falls on the public school. So the thought that since after you said that, all you talked about is public school burden, we've got to do this, this might happen, this might. And I'm not hearing anything about how much do the charter schools do? Have they found sites? Are they regulated so they can say, hey, we earnestly tried to do A, B, C, and D, we couldn't do it, so now we come to you.
Right.
That seems like something, I don't know anything like you might know.
So there's no requirement that a charter school go look for a private land first.
Oh, I thought that's what part of that.
They have both options, but there's no sequencing there.
So they can just say, we're not going to take that option, we want you to do the work.
Yeah, you could have a very small mom and pop charter that just says, we don't have this kind of money, we're not going to look at the private market or real estate market, we're just going to go straight to the district and ask. And that's fairly common. And so we've had a number of those, and so that's how we ended up housing one school behind Kennedy. We've got another school housed behind this elementary school called Nystrom. So yeah, it's not you have to do one and then go for the other. It's just your choice, and there's a timeline by which I think it's November 1st. A charter school has to ask us for the next year. We have to give a preliminary offer by February 1st. Then there's usually a challenge to that offer because we're not offering what you want. And then we are in negotiations through the spring.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a great deal for the charter schools and a lot of burden for the public school.
It's not easy.
The other question that popped into my head, and I'll let everybody else talk, and this is just a global picture of a very important issue that we're all concerned about, is ultimately, just to make it personal, who will be making a final decision about Crespi when all the cards are on the table and all the whatevers in a year or 2 years? Is it you? Is it a body of people? Who said, this is what we're going to do? Thank you.
School board. So usually I'm
the school board. Okay.
I'm the one staff.
So they'll have a vote.
Yeah.
And
So
wherever the vote goes, you have to do it.
right.
Okay.
And usually it's the staff, meaning me, based on my staff, is making a recommendation to the school board to do X, Y, Z. But it is the school board, and it is ultimately the school board that can say, will say, you know what, Mr. Duffy's staff, Crespi, Pinole Middle, they're off limits, so find another solution. They can give us direction in that way, and I think, what I also want to be saying to our board, and I'll say it on Thursday in the study session, until either of these schools were to drop below 300, 350 kids, we shouldn't even be considering anything, and there should be, and I want to share I hate choosing a number. It's a terrible thing to do. But at the same time, to give the community some sense of hey, there's some parameters here where it wasn't like, Mr. Duffy just said this, but I'm still not trusting it as he walks out the door, that we can say, actually, we're putting this number down, and we know we're hundreds of kids away from that. So, so the board could have something a little bit more concrete to go on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you help me with hands?
Rachel?
My concern, and among all the concerns, I have a lot of them, but my main concern is when my daughter gets here, you're already in a negotiation for next year, so when my daughter gets here the year after next, I think it would be very uncomfortable for students here at Crespi to intermingle with students at Invictus. Is that the name? Invictus. Being that one, they're wearing uniforms, and it may be seen by others that they are better than us. It creates division between the students, the student body, between the teachers, between the faculty, and that is not okay for me because I don't need anyone telling my child that they are better than her. And it may not be verbal, but it's nonverbal things that we get in the environment that says you're less than because you go to public school. I believe in this school. All the issues that I've had, they've been addressed. The issues that will come have been addressed, and they're not negative issues. They're not, all of them are not positive, but yet we are a community here, and I don't want someone from the outside coming in saying that we don't deserve these hallways, or these classrooms, or the auditorium, or the gym. We should be able to be here. Our children should be able to be here and own this school as their own. I don't have a child coming here next year, but I want that option. And if you take that away, I know you said that you're not, but it's not solely up to you. If that option is taken away, then I'm forced to go out of my area, making my child late for school every morning, making me pick my child up late every afternoon. Child care, it will affect in the future every part of our lives, and it's not okay. Solely because people in our community, outside of our community, think that charter schools, and this one in particular, is better than us, and it's not. I don't believe it is.
Wait till they try to go to college, then they'll find out.
Mr. Duffy, can I speak to that a little bit? So I've been in the negotiations with Mr. Duffy's associate superintendent, or our associate superintendent, Lisa LeBlanc. And I want to say on behalf of Mr. Duffy and Ms. LeBlanc that they have done a really good job of supporting us in maintaining the sanctity of the primary school building and keeping that commingling as separate as we possibly can.
Is there an option, if they keep pushing, is that an option to say, no, you cannot have this building? Is that and if we say no, what are the, yes?
Well, I think two things. One is the co-location comes with so many challenges. It's what we're trying to avoid, ultimately. I think it comes down to a question of space and negotiations, but if we get to a year from now, right, and Crespi has the same enrollment, it does, then, and that school is growing, they can't fit here together. So unless we're going to build portables out here somewhere, which is always an option, right, most likely we're not going to be sharing. The only way we end up getting ourselves in that situation is if the enrollment at Crespi drops precipitously and suddenly 6 more classrooms are available, which is what we don't want to happen. But I really hear you. We have been working hard on the negotiations, but it's tough. You're right, and I recognize the issues you're raising.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
We're out of time. Another meeting with the data is going to be Thursday, but in that data, can we see the number of students that have left charter schools and get that data because some have left? Get the number of, they said their testing is better, so can we get that? Is there a way to get that data? So because I feel like right now, even though we're being proactive, we don't have all the information, and knowledge is power, and we don't have that because we don't have any of their information unless they release it, and be transparent with that data. And if it's black and white, it's not arguable. So if we get those test scores and say, hey, our students here at Crespi, they are doing X, Y, and Z. And what are your students doing? If we don't have that comparison data, then we don't have a leg to stand on. And I think that's very important to get factual information.
I think that's right. We'll do our best for certain requests on Thursday, but
I know.
Yeah, but I get your point of just like being armed with information.
Okay, there's a couple things parents can do. I was a parent at Elhorst, and in 6th grade, our kids went up to Pinole Middle. It was one of the best schools. My kids loved it. And one of the things that we did as parents at Pinole Middle is we went back to the feeder schools and go in and leave the fear that parents have of kids going to junior high school. You'll boost your numbers, because if they see parents supporting, it'll help the school. I just do that. Now, having served on the redistricting committee and the budget committee, we closed schools, right, for financial reasons. And now we have a school district that is allowing more charters that pushes pressure. So I know there's Alvarado, there's Vista Hills, there's Seaview. If anything, maybe we rebuild one of those schools and we put all the charters there. Okay? I'm just saying. Because commingling makes the kids, it's bad. It sends a different message and it sends division. And we have enough division in this country right now that we don't have to have this. I'm just beside myself in how sad this is, because if we don't address it now as a community, we're going to have more kids going to charter schools thinking it's greener on the other side. And we have to be real clear. I'd like to also have the population numbers, because there was declining population, or it stayed straight. It didn't jump up, right? And we do have a lot of people that are leaving the area for financial reasons. So you have to understand those numbers. And secondly, they may score better because they're in school longer, right? And they pick certain students, and they have small classes. So of course those children are going to do better.
I'm not sure they are.
Well, okay, that's the case. So that's the data we have. That's the data you have to see.
Yeah.
Right? But I'll be honest with you guys. Have you been down to Marina Bay lately and seen all the charter schools and those nice new buildings? Well, we're paying rent on those buildings. So just be aware of
The
that.
school district is paying the rent for the charter
No.
school.
Are they not paying rent?
Not on those. So let me.
Which one's that?
So I'll just.
Not on those.
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit. So you covered.
You should clear that up.
You covered a lot. So yes, in terms of like alternate spaces, I mean, this is the stuff that keeps us all up at night. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And you know, a lot of it comes down to money, of course, and how much it costs to rehabilitate these spaces and how much space we need. Just a note, and I think your idea about going to the elementary schools is so important for both the parent connection and to help people think about.
Keep your numbers up.
Yeah, and just to know like this isn't a scary place, because the main reasons folks choose out of our district, one is safety. Like that is the primary thing we hear from parents is their kids, they want them to feel safer, they don't feel safe enough. It's safety, safety, safety. That's one, and academic rigor is the second one that comes up quite a bit. But I think helping to debunk that. At Marina, no, that is the A-Method Charter Organization, and they lease those buildings themselves. That's theirs. We actually have bought one of the buildings. That's our headquarters for maintenance, operation, payroll. That's ours. We bought it. But the 2 or 3 buildings they have, they lease
So maybe in the information that you put out, you clearly put whether they're renting and the district's paying, or whether they're leasing. So that might also help with the transparency of the information to parents.
Sure.
Would the district ever pay for a lease for a charter?
They're leasing with taxpayer money.
We have not ever done that. Like, we're going to go buy you a building. So we're either, if we're going to spend money, we're bringing in portables, or we're rehabilitating a part of a school for that.
But that's an acceptable practice. We can go and rent space if it's cheaper than putting a portable committee together.
Yes and no. And that's a question I don't know that I have 100% perfect answer to. because one of the differences in charter law is that their facilities are built to a different standard, a lower standard than our facilities. So, so that's why, like, if I wanted to purchase a building at Hilltop and put our kids there, I couldn't do it because we are bound by stricter laws as a district in terms of safety. It's called the Field Act. Yeah, so we're bound by the Field Act, which has very, very strict regs on what has to be coded and up to a certain code in a building. And charters operate under different conditions, which is why you see them in all sorts of different kinds of physical spaces.
So we can't just give them Alvarado and let them build it? Bring it up to code?
No,
We have to bring it up.
that's our responsibility
So
to come
that's-
up to code. So, yeah,
I saw a bunch of hands.
Go,
We're-
let's do
we're
the hands.
top pointing right now, and it's almost 6 o'clock. So the loose order that I have is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you had one back.
Okay, great. We're talking, I hear the recurring theme of being proactive to try and prevent the closure of certain schools. One of the things I've noticed is that we are working against a marketing machine, which is what charter schools are, and yet our websites do not contain basic information about classes. For example, I've got an 8th grader. I want to find out what classes are available at De Anza. I want to find out about all the great programs. I want to find out about what language classes. I want to find out about all the wonderful things that I know are there, but they're not being marketed. This is something that can very easily be remedied. And same thing with Crespi. We've got some wonderful programs, and yet our website is woefully behind. And this is one of the ways that parents who are doing research right at this very moment, trying to figure out where to send their 6th graders, their 6th grader to, where to send their 8th graders to next year, they're looking at our websites right now, and they are not finding out about the programs that we have. And that is, I want to ask you what kind of plan we have, not just website-wise, but what is the marketing plan for trying to boost the numbers and get the information out about what we all know what we have, but other people don't. So how can we change that?
Yeah, thank you. The website, I really appreciate that. It's something we are working on. We have the central website and then all the 55 school websites. And that is work we're doing. We're going to be opening or using some new templates that are a lot cleaner. Our website's very busy and clunky, and we're like 100% aware of that. So that's
already a team involved?
We have a communications team that's working on that, but it's something we have to build wider capacity in our district where more of our folks understand how to get in and out of that site quickly, how to post, how to take things down. So,
Do we have a particular timeline? Like, do you know about when we would expect our website to be revamped and contain at least specifically contain all of the class and program information that each school has?
I don't have that. I can get that for you, especially at a school-by-school kind of situation. I'm happy to try to find that out.
Yeah,
more.
I don't need to know personally.
Yeah.
I just think
No, I think, no, you're right. I mean, that's a part of our world today is where people go quickly to a site. So I appreciate that.
marketing our open houses, having open houses. I mean, are people within the district going to the charter schools to see how do they market to families, and how can we do something similar? They lie. They market. They misrepresent.
I mean, part of that is because it is sort of a changing world and a new world, like, it's a new thing for a school like Crespi to have weekly parent tours where they're hosting folks and they're going to, give them tours of the school and share everything, because if you're just a few years ago, everybody from the neighborhood was coming here, that wasn't part of the deal. Now that you are competing and having to think differently, everybody's having to shift as quickly as they can to think through that. We obviously have a small communications team, and we're targeting some schools that are the hardest hit first, like places like Steege. There's another school in Richmond called Lincoln, which we're doing a lot of work around, and people wouldn't know that that's actually one of our highest performing schools. If you just looked at schools who are growing students, not their scores coming in, but the growth that they make when they're in that building. So our communications team is like trying to target a set of schools that we think are places we're losing the most enrollment. But you're bringing up a point that a lot of folks are talking about, is just like, how do we continue to market, sell, share what we're doing? And that is, you know, things where...
Example, Valley View's Parents Club started doing their own new kindergarten welcome tours. New family tours for people who are interested in seeing the schools. So that's another resource that maybe you could look into, because you are talking about so many schools and limited resources. Reaching out to the local parents club, give them a template, give them something, let them be your, you know, feet on the ground. And help you out, because if there's a coordinated effort, you can. There are a lot of parents who'd be willing to help out in that, because they have an they're invested in their local schools too.
It would be also nice to see you and the district throw your muscle behind people like this principal that have to tell the truth when they're talking to prospective students, and to give a reality check that the charter schools don't have that same obligation. I've watched this man have to be brutally honest about the things that need to be improved and the things where Crespi is strong. And the charter schools just pull out a Donald Trump, the best, the greatest, the smartest, the happiest. And we need you as a superintendent, and we need the school board members to give reality check and say, you know what, hey, there's different standards here, parents. You got to open your eyes at very least. And now go back to your regular schedule.
Well, basically, it's the same concern, but it is a limit when we say, okay, we borrowed this building for 1 year, but it's going to be enough. Figure it out in another way for you, since, I mean, to cut the money, who create the law to accept that some other school is going to get the money from the public? I mean, it is a play there where you allowed in the first place, I mean, not you, the system, the education system allowed a secondary way to teach, but it is being fake and just trumping.
Joseph was mentioning this earlier about, you know, the charter law, when you accept a charter, when a charter petitions you and asks, we are not allowed by law to look at the financial implications of the charter school on the district. And that is something that there's a lot of energy around changing. So here's a really simple, an example. We pay a small lifetime retiree benefit that this district has paid to its retirees. And so it's about $18 million we pay from our budget every year. And so if you think about our 30,000 students, right, that's about $600 or so off every kid that we take to pay that. So if a new school comes into our community and we lose some students, they're not obligated to contribute to that. So it means we've got to take a little bit more off every kid to pay for that. And so we can't look at any financial implications of a new school coming in, which is one of the really difficult things. And the money basically, you know, I always imagine a student with a backpack and their state allocation of about $10,000, and where they go, that's where the money goes. So.
What's the conclusion of this? I mean, we have to change.
Well, there's a lot of energy right now about this. Our board adopted a resolution to ask the state to pass a moratorium on charter schools. There's a lot of energy right now to think more deeply about the financial implications. And I know there's people in this room that are really thinking about leading that effort while I figure out this physical space stuff.
Call and write your assembly people.
No, I had the same point, sir. Whether that, what are you doing to promote our school? You know, that's that way parents don't leave and we keep the numbers going. And you guys need to do that.
Well, we need to do that.
You guys can do it together. Ok, lo voy a hacer en español porque no me expreso muy bien en inglés. Usted está hablando del derecho que tienen ellos de pedir un share para compartir. Entonces, ¿qué derecho tienen los que ya están? Porque de lo que yo me acuerdo, primero era Crespi, pidieron ellos compartir. Yo en ese tiempo estaba ahí y dije, ok, van a compartir, ya está en la escuela. No me parece justo que ahora van a decir, ya no nada más quiero compartir, sino que lo voy a agarrar. Están actuando como una enredadera. Como se sube un árbol, déjame subir y luego lo voy a secar. Ahora, yo estoy pensando que están dejando el sobrante abajo. Porque el sobrante, esta escuela, físicamente está bien fea, le falta mucho arreglo. Pero tiene muy buenos maestros, muy buenos programas, que es lo que importa. La escuela Valley View también necesita es muy buena escuela y necesita dinero. Entonces yo pienso que dijeron, es más fácil, le damos la escuela fea y dejamos la de Pinole, que está bien bonita. En Pinole acaban de invertir muchísimo dinero en la preparatoria y la secundaria. Entonces, ¿a dónde se está todo el dinero? De nuestros impuestos. Porque es carísimo. Yo acabo de remodelar mi casa, me costó carísimo lo que pagué para las escuelas. Y no me parece justo que voy a andar averiguando a ver dónde voy a llevar a mi hija. Eso es lo que quisiera saber, qué va a pasar con todos esos niños. Es un descontrol primero que acaban la primaria y luego a la secundaria. De por sí 2 años es muy poquito para acostumbrarse. ¿Ok? En este caso deberían hacer un plan que todas las primarias llegaran hasta el 8 y ya entonces era preparatoria, pero no nada más decir, ok, pues la cerramos y se acabó.
She brings up a lot of points and a lot of good ones. So the first thing she was asking was really, what are the rights of the kids who are here? Don't they get sort of the first rights? And then she was also talking about just like, it feels like we're leaving El Sobrante behind and letting it sort of fall apart, whereas Pinole Middle and Pinole Valley High have new schools, and sort of what happened to that money from our taxes that yeah, we're supposed to pay for these different repairs. ¿Puedo responder en inglés y algo puede traducir?
I understand when you talk in
está bien.
English. It's
Okay.
just difficult to me to speak
Yeah, no.
Spanish.
Yeah,
I
thank you
understand
for, I'm the same way. Yeah, you know, this is a really difficult question about the facilities. This is my 3rd year here, and a lot of facilities decisions were made, and certain communities got a lot, and other communities got a little. And it's very difficult. Even our 2 main high schools in the city of Richmond, they don't look good at all. And they're our most high-need schools, Kennedy High and Richmond High. It's pretty sad to see that.
But you have money to make things for a charter school, but not to fix the already messed up schools that we have.
So this is...
Why not run and fix those schools and then tell the charter schools we don't have money for your stuff?
So this is the really crazy situation that we're in. So we have these bond dollars from you all, right? You see the 5 charges on your tax bill. Yep. So you have the 5 bond taxes on your bill. Now that we're not allowed to use any of that money for this kind of charter stuff, nor would we want to, right? There's about $180 million left, and it's all been allocated based on priority order of who's getting what from the bonds, right? And then if that's over, unless the community decides they want to give another bond in 2020. So there's a, to answer your question, yeah, there's a priority order of what's happening. And which schools get fully rebuilt. And there was only money for 2 more schools to be fully rebuilt, and one is Wilson Elementary in Richmond, and the other is Lake in San Pablo, and then that's it. And we still have a lot of need, but I also think, and this is a little bit of a different subject, And it's my opinion, of course, but
Just a quick
yeah.
question. Where are you gonna plan to relocate all the kids?
If you close this one.
Well,
Where are they supposed to go?
we don't want to do that. So
No,
the,
in case that you close.
we're not.
What is the plan?
So we haven't thought that far because that is really not the plan. I mean, the only way we would close this school is if the numbers got so small that we would have to do that, and then we'd have to think from there, okay, where are the students going to go? But we really haven't thought that far because it's not what we want to do at all.
Because you said you don't know what is gonna happen in 2020. You already said
I
it.
don't really know what's going to I don't know what's going to happen with the 2 charter schools. Where are we going to put them? That's what I don't know.
Well, according
and
to them,
that's-
they're already telling parents that, yeah, they're gonna
Yeah,
be
they're
here. They're gonna
they're
move here.
telling me, oh,
That's
did
what
you
the
know that
parents
next
are
year they're
telling
gonna
us.
get another building?
They have a
Yeah. They're
disinformation
gonna get
campaign.
it like this.
And it's
They're gonna get
really
it.
a problem, and we need you to push back. We need your help.
I want to add on to my mother's point. I feel like taxpayer money should go where they want it to go. For example, my sister, she's very shy. And she's going to go to Crespi, hopefully. And I feel like she shouldn't be pressured into thinking she's less than somebody else. Just because they have uniform on, just because they're in a different school with more funding, better things. On my way to school, right here, I saw their lockers were all painted, all nice. Everything was all decorated. I came in here, because I haven't come in here in a few months. I graduated last year from the school. And everything was painted, but it wasn't as nice as the charter schools. And I feel like our taxpayer money, not my mother's, I feel like her money should go into something that she invests in. She has children. I feel like that should prioritize some other school where teachers aren't even educated.
I really appreciate that, and that is our work to make sure we can get things looking as good as we possibly can, as soon as we possibly can, with pretty limited dollars. But I appreciate your question, your point, for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that if you're 65 years or older, you can file an exemption on your bond measures in your taxes for your homeowners.
Parcel taxes.
Yeah.
What?
Parcel taxes, not bonds.
No, I think bonds, 66, okay. Well, and then also I wanted to mention that Mr. Duffy is in the tough spot, and he really isn't the enemy. It took me a while to figure that out. But also the law that he's referring to is called Prop 39. I highly recommend that you guys look into it. And I wanted to ask him as well, Rocket Ship did a facilities request, and we all organized against Rocket Ship, and they were denied. And then they went to the county and were denied at county and state level.
Yep.
Why can't they organize against these co-locations?
That's a good question. I'd like to know the answer to that.
So I think 2 maybe different things. So one was just the petition itself, like we want to exist as a charter in your district, and we said no, and then we pushed the county to say no, pushed the state to say no. Now remember, one of the charters we're talking about, and a number of the charters have been approved by our local school board. So that's something we have to remember. But once here, that facilities process takes on a life of its own. But I did speak last week to State Superintendent Thurmond, who now I think is, while he was a board member, but he was an assembly member, he's really getting up to speed quickly on the Prop 39 process and has a lot of concerns about the situation. He's dealing with it in Oakland, he's dealing with it in here, he's dealing with it in Los Angeles. So I think he's really working on what is the right next steps here to make sure we can get out of these situations and just get into what we need to do, which is really great teaching, which is like why we're all here, great teaching and learning and experiences for kids. But we're certainly spending a ton of time on this. So yeah, he is more and more involved, and I think that will be helpful.
I saw Jonathan.
His daughter does go here.
One thing that the district does, the the charters can never touch us is we have a rock and music program. So many places. We got Mr. Fugal Stand.
I know.
And I've seen so many great concerts here. If we
I'm
could
going,
put,
that's where I'm going
if
now.
we could put some of the clips of our great music program on our website, that's a real grabber. They can never touch us.
What if we start our own YouTube channel?
That's where I think our time is up.
But
I want to just, this is why I waited to the end, because I understand you have the challenge of dealing with the facilities and the financial obligations, blah, 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 and that's pressing for you right now. But like people have said, if we don't start trying to turn the tide now on what's happening to our schools, we're just going to have to keep on making these decisions harder and harder every year until we're in the garbage. And yes, Mr. Thurman, that's why we voted for him. We appreciate that he'll do his best. However, right now, we've got only so much time, and every year is important. So, my question, is the school district restricted from partnering with parents on marketing our schools to our communities? Do you have restrictions? You said you have a restriction on considering the financial impact of bringing a charter. Are you restricted from amping up a marketing program that is based within the school district and partnering with parents? Because, like people have said, those charters will say anything, and they're getting our kids. We are just sitting back. I know,
And they're
Mr.
harming
Fleischman,
those kids.
when I first came and met you, I was like, everybody has to hear what you have to say about the programs here. But how can we work with you, and so that we see, okay, whatever we're going to do with our money, let's find some way to, this is what a business would do. Stem the tide. Stem the tide.
Let me say a couple of things. So, we're not sitting back and just doing nothing. So part of the work is marketing, and part of the work is like, what do parents also want, right? So I don't want to be in a position if parents are interested in something new, for example, also, we can't provide that.
You mean a new program?
So like, we opened a Mandarin immersion school. That's amazing, bringing folks back. There are a lot of interest in K-8 schools, so we've moved 3 of our K-6s to K-8s where parents wanted to stay. That was, we've opened an international school at Richmond High for lots of newcomer families. Like, we're out there cranking on, here's a thing that parents want, here's a thing that parents want. But in terms of marketing, no, there's no restriction. We want to do as much of that together as we possibly can, and we have to be, I think to your point, smart and targeted, because there is a specific clientele. It's predominantly Latino, it's predominantly low income, that are choosing charters, and we have to really get a deeper understanding of
they're targeted. We need recruiting of those parents, and the best way for me to think, right off the top of my head, to convince them is to get those parents whose kids have left the charter schools to be a voice, to explain what happened. That's where we have an opportunity. We gotta do a recruiting campaign, and I believe parents want to work with the school administration so that we can turn around our enrollment. We gotta make it a big part of our public schools, because that's what the law enforces us to do.
Can I speak to that real quick? What I'm hearing in the room, and kind of what I'm hearing from my call to action as a site leader, is the amount of energy in the room of community members and parents, both past and present, that are willing to help and do the work that needs to be done. And one of the biggest things that I find as a site leader is that I don't ever have enough people to do all of it. Like you mentioned the website, and for 4 years it's been on my mind of, God, I really got to get that.
It's true, every year he says, I'm gonna get that done.
We're gonna get it, right? Social media, we gotta get social media. I gotta find somebody on my site. It's savvy, and I think I finally found the person. But I'm hearing a lot of excitement and engagement and a possibility. So what I'm hearing as my call to action is to work with you, Nicole, and work with some of the former parents and stuff, and start having community meetings like this that are tailored around what do we need to do and what is the expertise in the room that can get some of those things done, and kind of build that groundswell that I'm hearing. So
And join with other schools,
And,
with other parents at all schools.
And speaking of good things, yeah, I'm off to MC and host our All-District Music Festival, which starts at 7 at the Richmond Auditorium. Yeah, there's
Well,
so
let
many.
them know that only us were doing the,
Yes,
concerts.
there's so many
no
great
charter
things
schools
happening.
have that.
There's so many great things happening, and I think we can't forget that. Otherwise, we're just gonna go down a rabbit hole of this terrible narrative. And so there's fantastic things happening that we have to continue to remind ourselves about and continue to keep selling, as you're saying. And I hate that word, sharing, maybe the better word.
We have to, because that's what we've been forced to do.
Yeah.
And you were talking about creative things that you're doing, new programs.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. However,
Yeah.
we can see in this school,
Yeah.
for example, we don't even need anything special and new. We've already got what we need as the core, and that we can sell right now without anything that's going to have bells and whistles on it. We
Agreed.
just have to get the word out.
I saw one last hand.
Right, so kind of just reiterating with a more specific question on what I mentioned earlier, I think pretty much everybody in here can agree the charter school laws as we have them right now are unjust, immoral, unfair. They're hurting our kids, they're hurting our communities, they're hurting our teachers. And so my question is, at what point do we say no, we are going to unite with other districts and challenge these laws? Because we're already basically past the point of no return, where even if we stop charter schools today with the moratorium, the growth of those that are already here are going to cause us serious financial problems. And so at what point do we do that? Are we in those conversations, at least with other districts, to say, hey, what are we going to do? Is that happening?
Yeah, it's happening in some way more than others. I think there is I would call it a loose network of superintendents who are in conversation about this very thing. My job is really to carry out sort of the will of the board and make the strongest recommendations I can to them. And if the board wants to make that call and say, we're going to say no to this, they can do that. I wish I could stand up here and tell you, like, I'm going to buck that law, but right now I can't say that. I've got to make sure we're legally and legally in compliance while understanding we're really between a rock and a hard place, and knowing that there's community folks out there like you who are going to work for that change. So I appreciate your point.
So we can go down to the board and tell them as parents what we want. Unfortunately, this is all political, and it's all about money. And those billionaires that have that money and have gotten some of those school board people into those positions of power over us, we can't just stop them. We got to have big, loud voices. We have to be out there on television. We have to have a program. And maybe they're going to stop you from working with us because they're getting paid to do that on the side or whatever way. But we need to try. We're not trying. So what can we do? Tell us. We'll go down to the school board. We'll do whatever.
On this case of the co-location, I think the school board is struggling with the same thing because they're struggling with how do we comply with this law.
Co-locate them. Seriously, co-locate them.
I don't have a place to do that that's not going to cost me $10 million right now. If I had that answer, we would have done that last year. I want to have that answer.
Maybe you need to ask your parents. Maybe they're willing to say, okay, you spend the money this one time, and you co-locate them.
Yes. So let's leave it there. We'll continue the conversation. I think we're going to keep pushing the boundaries and the ideas, and I'm really appreciative of everything you shared tonight, from pushing me to do better.
The meeting is you to come and say they're going to keep scratching, and unfortunately we're going to keep giving because it's not another way to turn around. And nice to meet you.
That's one way to describe this meeting, but
style, that's my translation in English.
yeah, I would say that we don't have the upper hand to say that that's it. So what I am saying is, yes, we're obligated to give space if it's asked over time until And that is the challenge that we're faced with. And so...
It's a bad marriage, though. Let's go find a big old pit to throw them in, because we don't want to drive down to some 5 miles away from our house. Let them go.
So
we'll find a big pit.
If they create that, it's because in the first place, somehow the education system allowed them. I mean, if they want to do something private, they should qualify as a private, and parents has to pay, and that's a different story. They have to build their own house. They cannot come and steal someone's house because I have my balls to do it, and that's what happened.
We just ask that you push back and don't make it easy. When I was at the school board meeting, when they put the co-location here, there was this very, well, what can we do? We just have to do it. I would have liked to see some more pushback. I get that you need to be fiscally responsible, but there's a real gray area between just sitting back and letting things happen and really pushing back, even if it's just verbally. And I'd like to see that from you
nobody's sitting
and
back.
the members.
Invictus did not want to be here. They want to be in central and south Richmond, and that's where they want to take the students from. And that's also like...
I didn't see a ton. I saw a lot of, what can we do at that meeting? I really did.
And that was decided in closed session, by the way, those co-locations. We found out about it on Twitter. Nobody even told us at Pinole Middle.
So now you know that there is this co-location process that will happen, and we'll try to be as clear as possible about who's asking and when they're asking.
You might want to think about going to city council meetings and letting the public know, since those are televised.
Yeah.
Go sort of the school board meetings.
We wanted to be at 2 of them right now. Got 6 minutes to get across the county.
All right.
I gotta go concert.
So Thursday,
Thank you very much.
Thursday,
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.